Thank you, Graham. Could I maybe take the opportunity to introduce
Yes.
Rob to the committee members? So Rob Campbell is the Regional Manager Maintenance Operations with Waka Kotahi, and it was an opportunity for Rob to come along and have a chat with us today, give us a bit of an update. Waka Kotahi have obviously got a lot happening sort of across the district and across the wider region, and so I'll hand over to Rob to provide us. He's got a presentation, I believe, to share with us and give us some insights. So over to you, Rob, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. And thanks very much to everybody for giving us the time to just come and talk to you this morning. Is this morning still? Yeah, just about. So it's been great to actually have the connection through Dawn into the governance structure for you guys. And it's something we want to do more of, to be honest. It's an area that we need to expand our efforts into, to talk more with both the officer level and Dawn and her teams, but also with you guys in the governance level. And today I've got a bit of a presentation. What I'd like to do is just talk about how we're structured these days, which has changed slightly. A few virtual introductions for the people who I work closely alongside, and then a bit of a breakdown into what's nationally important for us and what we're working on, and then some more regional, what's happening in your area, your patch, so you're really connected into the things that are happening around you, if that's okay. I've left a bit of time at the end for questions, and I'm more than happy to take questions. If I don't have the answers, I'll certainly come back to you, but I think we should be able to cover most things today. I'll just share my screen if I can hopefully get this to work. And fingers crossed you might be able to see a presentation there. So as I say, yeah. Rob Campbell, you can? Excellent. So Rob Campbell, the regional manager, as Dawn said, of the maintenance and operations. Now, we've structured ourselves, actually there is a number of regional managers, which might seem a little bit strange, but there's a reason for that. So our team across the region, our region, by the way, is Waikato and Bay of Plenty. I'm actually based in Tauranga, and some of my compatriots here are actually in the Hamilton office. So we're broken down into certain different areas of focus, skill sets. So, and you may already come across some of these people. So David Spears is our Director of Regional Relationships. His role is to really hold enduring relationships with mayors, CEs, key stakeholders, iwi, those type of people, and also our ministers and members of parliament and the like. So he's operating at that level. Working alongside me as regional manager is Jo Wilton. So she's based in the Hamilton office. She works in the infrastructure delivery. So her remit is all those big projects, the new build stuff that's going on. Jess Andrew, who works in the Tauranga office with me, is in the system design space. So her role is to look at the long-term planning, the strategic planning, and working very closely with councils and other organisations who are looking to invest or to make decisions around infrastructure in the transport sector, but also looking at transport as an enabler. How does transport enable growth? How does it enable industrial development? How does it enable modal shift, that kind of thing? So that's her area of expertise. Jeanette Williams helps in the engagement and communication space. She's based in the Hamilton office. And Brian Nicholas has joined us recently as Opahari. He's there to help us with our iwi relations, to make sure that we are well connected to our treaty partners. And it's important that we are, acting in good faith as treaty partners with our EU in the region. And there's myself there in the regional manager space for maintenance and operations. So my area of expertise and focus is what's happening today on the ground in our maintenance space, how we're operating the network, and how that is affecting those who are travelling around our network. So you will see these people around. I'll go back one actually. We're there to connect with you. Our role is to be available to you, to build enduring relationships with yourselves, and to be well connected in. So that we've put this in place because we heard from our local sector partners that it was quite hard to deal with Waka Kotahi. A lot of people based in Wellington or not in the region, not understanding the nuances of what's happening across your region. So we've put these teams in place. There's 5 sets of these managers across the country to have that local focus, to understand the detail. We can take that back into our conversations when we have to still nationally prioritise. There's a limited pot of money and a limited number of things we can do. We want to make sure that we can give the regional voice from yourselves into that decision making, and that's what our role is here to do. So I've just switched now a little bit to what's our national focus. What are we looking at? What's the most important thing on our page at the moment? It's really Road to Zero. And you've seen, or you may have seen already, a new series of adverts that we're putting out in place to start that conversation at a national level of what does Road to Zero really mean? And it's all about safety. The Road to Zero is a vision that where there's a road system that actually we shouldn't have to expect that the toll to go out on that note is a risk of losing your life or having some serious injuries. It's not something that we should be accepting as a society. Now, obviously, the move to that it's not going to be easy, and it's not just simply focused on infrastructure, or it's a whole range of different things that will be needed to shift us in that direction. And realistically, so our initial target is by 2030 to reduce the death and serious injuries by 40%. And to achieve that, we'll have to do a lot of different things. We're going to have to look at how the system works overall, that road users are making appropriate choices, that they have the right training and the right experience, that we are using our infrastructure well, that we have safe infrastructure, and that the speed is appropriate for that infrastructure, that vehicles are appropriate. We know that the fleet we have here is quite an old fleet. It's over 12 years old is the average age. Vehicles coming in these days will need to be much more safe, have a lower or a higher safety rating than previously, so that people are driving in the appropriate vehicles to keep them safe. And also, we're looking at work-related road safety as well. So we're operating on the road. We have people out there at risk, but also their activities themselves can put people at risk. So all these things need to come together to be to make small incremental gains across the board, which added together will hopefully take us to the 40% reduction that we're looking for by 2030. And that's going to need quite a changing conversation across the board with our public, with people like yourselves, so we can see a different way forward than perhaps we've seen in the past. And that's something we're just starting now. You'll see the adverts going out, and the focus for us for the next couple of years is to start some of the incremental changes, but also change the conversation that we're having with the public. And that will need a lot of open conversations, a lot of consultation, and a bit of a focus on doing things differently. If we moving on now to what's actually happening in your area. So the most important one and the big thing that's going in the long term will be the Cambridge to Prairie corridor, and there's a lot going on in that space. And we're still currently working on that project, looking at the long-term safety improvements between Cambridge, basically at the end of the Expressway, and up to Prairie at the 21 and 29 intersections. We're still working the detailed business case has identified the preferred route for a 16-kilometre long 4-lane expressway extending from the southern end of the Cambridge section of the expressway right down to that intersection. Consultation is ongoing, and it will continue for some time. And there's going to be some opportunities for the community to engage in the very near future, within the next few months. The next stage is to seek funding to go to that next stage. Is not currently funded in our NLTP. But the opportunities there will be to, once we get that funding confirmed, to include the detailed design, the tendering, and ultimately the construction. But we need to just stress that we don't have that funding yet in the NLTPs. We're forecasting that expenditure to be probably in the 27 to 30 NLTP. So it is quite some distance away. But we want to be in a position to be ready to deliver when that funding becomes available, whenever that might be. And the total cost at the moment is estimated, and it is an estimate, obviously, based on what we know, of around $635 million. So quite a big investment to secure from the NLTP at the appropriate time. So we put that to one side, and that's going to be quite some way. So even if we start in the 27-30, we're probably looking at a 3 to 5 year construction period. It's quite a big piece of work, probably the 3 years. So at earliest, we might see this on the ground at 2030. So we've got about 8 years of managing the network in its current form, which is quite a long time. So what we are looking at doing, and we're on with at the moment, is the actual roundabout upgrade itself at Prairie, the Stateway 129 intersection. So that new roundabout is largely to improve the safety of that particular intersection. We've already lodged the applications for the notice of requirements and resource consents for that roundabout with the relevant councils, with Regional Council, Magnetometer, PRCO, and South Waikato. There is, the public information session was held in Cambridge on the 25th of January, which went very well. We're hoping that construction will be able to start on that by the end of this financial year, or sorry, this calendar year, so in the next construction season. But of course, we do have to wait to see what the outcomes are of the consent process and the landowner negotiations, which are underway as we speak, which is so good progress on that one. The section from Cambridge to Prairie itself, obviously with 8 years to go before we might be able in a position to fund the longer term improvements, there is a need to improve some of these intersections and some of that corridor as well from a safety point of view. So we're implementing more work on that Stateway 1, which continues to make the road safer. The first stage was completed back in 2020, went from Ferguson Gully Road south towards Prairie, and that was completed in December 2020. And the next stage for us is medium barriers on a 4.5 kilometre section from the reserve at the end of Stage 1, the Stage 1 barriers through to the Magnetometer Road. We're working through what the options are and what the preferred design would be, and that will be next thing to do with that is to come out to the community to discuss with the people who live alongside there and our users and all the stakeholders what the options are, what our preferred solution might be, and to seek feedback on what that means for them as a community so we can hone and change those designs as necessary. We're hoping to be in construction by the 2022-23 construction season, so next summer essentially is where we're looking at for that one. There's another section, stage 3. There's another almost 8 kilometres of safety improvements from the current end of the Cambridge section, Expressway down to Ferguson Gully Road, and that includes the intersection at Carapiro, Hickey and Hydro Roads, which will be important just because they are probably some of the known risk areas that we have at this stage, and we're certainly seeing risk and accidents at those spaces. So we want to progress with that as stage 3. Having the median barriers through there is going to be quite important to make sure we keep that safe. So that does there'll need to be some safe turnaround facilities constructed as well. So when we're talking about median barriers, it's easy to put the barrier in, but of course we have to be cognizant of how the community who live alongside that road use it and need access to their properties. So it does mean constructing either U-turn facilities or roundabouts in that space. And that's the sort of detail we're working through at the moment, and we'll go back to the community around what the options might be. There are some other safety improvements being looked at across the region. There's about 6 across the Waikato. And we're just at the stage of actually looking at what those, about 6 intersections. We can make a big difference in those places. So we want to make sure we're moving those and the feasibility studies are moving forward, just assessing the scope, the cost, the risk, the timeframes, what's achievable in those locations. That work's ongoing as we speak. They'll inform decisions whether we can actually progress to the next stage. Is it feasible to do something here? In most cases, it will be. So then we'll need to apply for the funding from the Road to Zero funding that we have available to us at a national level. Within Waipa particularly, of those 6, State Highway 3 and Rains Road is the one that's probably the most interest. The study on that one will be completed in the next couple of months, and our team's already connecting in with Waipa operations staff for their input based on what will come out of that study. And that'll go through a process of what is achievable, what does it look like, what does good look like for all involved. From there, we apply for funding for our detailed design from the Road to Zero funding that we have available to us. I can list the other ones if you want. Maybe come back to that at the end if there's questions of the other areas we're looking at more widely across the Waikato. The other thing I just want to touch on was Magnetometer bridge replacement. So we're certainly aware that that's causing some issues on your local roads at the moment in terms of the detour that some trucks are taking. So the contract to repair, the issue is the deck has actually reached the end of its life and it can no longer take the full capacity loads. It's perfectly safe for everyday car users at the moment, but if we continue to run large vehicles over there, we will reach the state quite quickly where we'd have to shut the bridge, which obviously we don't want to do. So we have put in place some detours. The detour is around the state highways, but we do know that there's a reasonable number of trucks who are not using that detour and actually using your local roads, which we understand and very aware that it's causing some issues for your residents. So we have had a contract to replace that bridge deck. That's gone to Alscon, who are going to do that work for us. They're already working off site to facilitate that work and get in there as soon as possible. A lot of the work is done off site. So that will move as quickly as we can, and we're hoping to have that done in the next, by the middle of the year, basically. When we're doing the work, it will mean having to shut the bridge for a period of time while we replace the bridge beams and the deck itself. And we'll work closely with the council staff as to the timing of that, make sure it's coordinated. In the meantime, obviously, we've got a situation, undesirable situation, where we've got our trucks off our highway running through the local road. We are increasing signage and the like, but actually we're also targeting specifically the trucks who are doing that. Using our regulatory services, we can reach out to trucks that we're observing and recording using them on a regular basis, and actually reaching out to those guys and saying, hey, look, please don't do this. There's a reason for it, and tell the story of what effect that's having on the community. And we're starting to see some good results from that very targeted approach. So we'll keep working very closely on everything we can do to minimise that effect on the people in the area particularly.
Rob, could I just ask you a question on that, please?
Certainly.
Because I'm the councillor in the area that's affected by that detour. Mm-hmm. And the feedback I'm getting from the residents is particularly about the 50k speed signs that have been put just close to the one-lane bridge, I guess, and that there was identified pretty quickly that it'd be beneficial to move those signs further out to give the the truckies more time to slow down, but nothing's been done on that. And it's pretty frustrating that it's been acknowledged that that should be that intervention should be changed, but nothing seems to happen. Yeah, if you could sort of get onto that, that'd be great. And can I just check too? You mentioned that when the repairs to the Magnetometer bridge occur, that the whole road would be closed, because when that work was done originally, they did manage to keep one lane open or something.
Yeah, we'll do that to some degree, but there will be shortish periods where we will have to shut the whole thing. But I'm not talking about 4 months at end here. It'll be for a number of days where we have the whole thing shut, just to allow us to get in. As you do the centre, basically, it gets quite difficult. There's not enough width. So yeah, I don't want to give the impression we'll be shutting for months, but there will be some periods that are relatively short, we hope.
Yeah, cool.
Looking through that now.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm very aware that when we do shut roads, obviously it's a significant issue. We don't do it lightly, and it has an impact around the whole network of people redirect and go places that we perhaps would prefer they didn't, shall we say. Okay. I think let's move on just briefly through to Te Awa shared path, the Cambridge to Hamilton, just a bit of an update on there. So that's the 20 key of shared path between Cambridge and Hamilton, providing that safe off-road alternative for walkers and cyclists. So there are some delays in the Hamilton section where the full path can't be completed till around the middle of 2022. So we're probably about 3 or 4 months away in that space. And we will be planning a bit of a celebration for that in the summer of 22-23. But the good news is the State Highway 21 underpass is due for completion in early March, so not very many weeks away from that, which we know will be very much enjoyed by a number of users in the community there. So we're looking forward to a bit of celebration around that. And the linked into the Hamilton section is still that work to be done, but that's making good progress as well, with an expected opening of not too far in the middle of this year. So we're not too far away as well, which will allow us to get some connection through there as well. So we're really pleased to see that go through. And I think it'll be a huge success, that piece of infrastructure and connecting the communities. And just briefly, I'll just touch on the maintenance program, which is my area of expertise, but it's actually going very well this year. Just as context, we're actually delivering the biggest maintenance program we've ever attempted to deliver. The next 3 years, this year, the next 2 years, the NLTP has increased funding, and the volume of work we do, as well as the dollars that we spend, is the biggest we've ever attempted to do. Where progress is going pretty well. Obviously, we've had some delays through COVID and some wet weather and the like, so it's quite challenging. But we have a lot of work being done. We had a great period over the Christmas where we stopped over the actual Christmas breaks, but they have done a lot of work, and they'll be working through on the network and through to the end of March. So you will see disruption, and obviously chip seal sites particularly out there, and we apologise for those delays. But it will go a long way to bringing the network up to a level of service that we can endure with, and continue that work over the next 3 years, which is really good. Just a little bit of update on the Expressway itself. As I say, we're looking for opening of mid-2022. We're about 80% of the way through the asphalting now, so we're completing that around the end of March. So that's going pretty well. There will be a series of little traffic switches coming up, just for your interest more than anything else. I think there's one on Tuesday night, and actually we're putting traffic across the Cambridge Roads Bridge for the first time. So you'll see a number of switches through there as we come towards completion, which is really good news. And the 110 speed limit review on the Expressway, the speed review there, just to, the consultation closed back in November. We had over 700 submissions and a very large degree of support, but we're still working through just the comments and the consultation that was done. But we'd expect to be coming out fairly soon with a decision on and discussion around what will happen in that space. But it's progressing very well.
Rob, we've just got a question from one of our councillors, Philip Coles.
Oh, yes.
Philip, you want to come in now?
Sure.
I'm happy to wait. I'm happy to wait till after Rob's
presentation.
After Rob's report.
Okay, thank you.
After his presentation.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Rob. Anyway, so that's okay, and then we'll open to questions and happy to take those. So, and I think really just the last couple of points was that we're aware that you've got a infrastructure acceleration funds application in, which is awesome. And in principle, we're very supportive of that. So we've given our feedback. So obviously the process is still going through, but just to be aware that, we have commented on that, and we're very supportive of what you've applied for. And just the other last thing is the Streets for People. So the second round of Innovating Streets for People is open now, and we're engaging with Dawn's team around whether you'd like to submit an expression or not for that. So that's entirely up to you, but the opportunity is there. And that's really the end of my presentation. So I just realised.
Thank you.
I was pressing the screen hasn't changed. I've been pressing going forward, and it didn't. Oh, there it is.
No.
We're now in discussion.
Thank you. We'll
So
start
any
off with Philip. Thank you, Rob. We'll just start off with Philip, and then Roger's next. So you start away, Phil.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Rob, for your presentation today. And I attended that Poireri open afternoon at outside BNZ in Cambridge a couple of weeks ago that you talked about. So supportive of that project, and very supportive of the wire ropes being installed down all the way down through that stretch there from the Expressway to Poireri. The wire ropes will save lives because it stops those head-ons. I mean, motorbikers don't like them, but the cheese graters or something, I think, cheese graters, but they will certainly save lives to stop those head-ons. But you talk about Road to Zero, and my big bugbear is the Karapiro intersection. Karapiro and Poireri would probably be about the worst intersections in the country. I do a lot of driving around the place, so I'm fairly familiar with roads around the country. Personally, and I've been working with swaps and all the quarries there in the school and mobile garage for some time now, MPs trying to get something done there. And you talk about Road to Zero, but nothing's been done to that intersection. I don't even think the lines have been painted in the last 2 or 3 years since the project was pulled from the government. The Expressway was supposed to start 2 years ago. So something needs to be done there. It's stage 3, I think you said.
Right. Yeah, it's currently at stage 3, yep.
And that stage 3 is a really complex stage as well, with all the driveways and entranceways from south of the Expressway. But that actual intersection, I would have thought should be stage 1. It needs something doing to it. Flashing lights, reducing speed limits, something to get the police to park up there more often, just to get people to slow down. Once you see a police car, everyone slows down, don't they? But I've talked to David Spears about it and all his predecessors about it, and so that is absolute. That should be stage 1, not stage 3. I'm afraid, and something urgently needs to be done about it. Fortunately, we haven't got the international visitors here going to Hobbiton at the moment from the Magnetometer end and Cambridge end, but I really stress and encourage you all to do something immediately with that. I know everyone's looking at it and doing their scenarios and things like that, but they've been doing their scenarios for the last few years and still nothing's been done. So please. And there was another accident there, I think, on Saturday night at that intersection. I think it was that intersection, pretty sure it was. Fortunately, the person received injuries, not fatal, I believe. So that's great. Great that it's not a fatality. But please do something with that intersection. Thank you.
Certainly hear your plea there. So we do monitor, obviously, the program and which intersections of how they're performing all the time. So I'll certainly go back into the SIP guys and reiterate your view that this is one that should be a high priority. We can do that. Yeah.
And why I've got interest in this intersection. I was brought up just down the road on Hydro Road, which is also another bad intersection. And we're still property owners down there, so still got a good connection there, but it's for the community, rather, whether I've got a connection or not, still for the community. Please do something with that. Thank you. Thanks very much, Rob.
Thank you.
Roger, got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And really pleased and very supportive of the safety improvements you're making to the bypass road. But my question is one to do with the T-Row Road intersection with the bypass there. And as you know, currently it's only got a southbound access to it. Is there any consideration being given to a northbound access there? Because we are getting an increasing amount of heavy goods traffic that's actually coming from the south and coming through Cambridge to get to the main Victoria Road access. And so we're getting heavy traffic on local road. So it really would be a good consideration if there were northern access at that T-Row Road.
Okay. I think I can safely say I'm pretty sure that we actually don't have a plan there at this stage. I think that's the first I've heard personally that we've, perhaps seen some traffic patterns developing there that may not be desirable. But I think that's the sort of thing Dawn and I can work on to get the evidence and the data around that and just see how that might fit in. But I hate to say that money is an issue, but it always is. There's nothing in the NLTP at the moment. It's not in the regional land transport plan. So this would be identify the problem and move and put it in place so we can hopefully have an appropriate project considered in the next RLTP, which I think would be the way to do
Rob, I'd appreciate that, because I think that's a start, isn't it? By
that's right.
getting the data and getting the information to identify the level of the challenge that's there. So thank you for that, and that'll be good.
Great. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, thanks again, Rob, for your presentation. I see Brian's online, so this is just probably a question for Brian as well. The Streets for People funding applications are coming up again, and of course we did some of the streets mostly in Cambridge, not so much Leamington side. Brian, would we be looking at applying for some more funding to run some more trials, etc., to work towards help make good decisions with our urban mobility plans?
So we have prepared a registration of interest, and we were going to discuss that with the urban mobility working group to see whether it makes sense to put that forward.
Thanks for that.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Rob, is there any update on Southern Links at all? You were talking about the Range Road intersection, but Southern Links is pretty critical, really, for the growth in and around the airport, and obviously I suppose it's puts a boundary around Hamilton City, but is there any progress there?
It's moving forward, but I don't have a formal set of information, but I'm more than happy to go away, get a briefing prepared for you, or send something through to you guys so you've got the latest of where things are at. I'd rather not give the wrong information, but we'll get you the correct information if you're interested in that, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Rob, Graham, I sit on the Land Transport Committee at EW for Waipa, and we've been told that the business case was being reviewed. That's just, that's what we heard.
Yep, and that's pretty much all I could say to you, to be honest. So, as I say, we're more than happy to come back with as much detail as we can share, and it's in our control, obviously. And that's the purpose of these conversations, is what's of interest to you, so we can make sure we're feeding the information as best we can.
Obviously, the Southern Links has been in there all the time I've been on council, which is over 20 years, and the Narrows Bridge is not going to be lasting forever, and the new bridge was going to be part of that Southern Link. So I really, really do hope it does support a business case for that to happen. So much happening around the airport, so much happening.
Yeah, and growth across the entire that part of the district, if you like, is very significant. Yeah. And then that's the whole point. This is where Jess Andrews is the regional leadership team. That's her focus areas. Okay, let's look to the future. Working with obviously the councils of the area. What does the future look like? Where are the growth areas now? But where will they be in 10 years' time, 20 years' time? So we are best prepared to intervene at the right time in the right place.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any further questions for Rob? It's been a great informative presentation.
Just quickly, Graham.
Yes.
Hi, Rob. Susan O'Regan. I'm just trying to follow up a matter that was raised with me a long time ago, and I'm trying to find out whether that's actually been resolved. Sort of gone off the boil, and actually Liz may be able to feed into this one. It's the signage on the road around Ohaupo or Haupo coming from Kaipaki Road. The road signage there is places people driving out of the Kaipaki end in quite a predicament with the traffic screaming up really quickly because the road sign, actually, Bruce will probably not be able to understand this one too. The reduction in speed happens way too late for people to actually leave that intersection safely. And I was just trying to pull up all my correspondence about it. And I think the issue had been thrown around through various staff that came and left and came and left and came and left, and then strategies were abandoned, and then new shiny policies were produced. And with each wave of changes with the organisation, it kept being lost. Bruce, are you able to tell me whether that's actually been fixed in any way, shape or form?
No, hello, Rob, Bruce Thomas. No, I've had no satisfaction either for a long time. We haven't followed it up recently. It's just that the 70, I think, is just past the Kaipaki Road entrance on the southern side. So it needs to be moved down the dip a bit so people have got time. One of my residents up Kaipaki Road, he got cleaned up. Okay, no fatalities, thank goodness. But it just needs a sign movement, really. There's not enough space for anyone to, and it's on a brow of a hill coming up. So you pull out and it's a blockage with someone turning left into Kaipaki Road, and they can be right behind it, just motoring at 100 and whoops, 70. So it's just I think it's just a sign movement. You guys have the authority to do that. We don't.
Here we go.
No, it's something we have to have a look at. I don't pretend to know the detail of that one, which I'll certainly look into.
State Highway 3 in Kaipaki intersection, and I was corresponding with members of the New Zealand Transport Agency back in October 2019, I was going to say, and to the best of my knowledge, it hasn't changed. And Bruce is right, all it would entail is a movement of that speed reduction sign closer to, is it Downs? What's the name of the road there, Bruce?
Oh, no doubt, I'd say move it 100 metres closer to Hamilton on that same side.
Yeah. So
that's all it needs.
There were suggestions made by locals that they'd get out there with their tractors and move it themselves. But we'd had to try and insist that that probably wasn't a good move.
Yeah, that one. We'll come back to you with a formal response. Well, I know it seems like a simple thing to do, but there's actually quite a legislative process, unfortunately, around even simple changes like that. And one of the issues we often find is that moving a sign doesn't actually change behaviours. So the sign is an enforceable thing. It's about how the road feels and how the users will interact with it. So it might be that shit needs a bit more than just a move the sign to actually get the change in behaviours that we're looking for. And that might be something that we've got to look at in a bit more depth now. But let me go and find the history of that and talk to the right people, and we'll come back to you.
Rob, I can send you the exchange. I was dealing with Laura Ager, and then I was dealing with Desiree Whirl. I've got the train of emails here.
That'd be awesome. If you could flick that through, it'll help me hone in on the right people to talk to.
And there was a Sandy, somebody or other, and then there were safety engineers all going to go out and do stuff, but needless to say, nothing ever really happened. And I appreciate what you say about sometimes these things are a little bit more not quite as simplistic as moving a sign, but I'm quite a straightforward person, and I know exactly how the residents feel around there because they have friends there. I go and see them regularly. It doesn't feel safe coming out of that road, and a movement of that sign is a very simple, commonsensical way of encouraging people to slow down sooner rather than later. So I'll send this through to you, Rob.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Cool.
All right, team.
Thank you.
Everybody satisfied? Leads me to thank you, Rob, so much for that very frank and in-depth heads up. We really appreciate it in our own patch anyhow. And yeah, good to see you over here, and hopefully we can have that liaison a bit closer.
Yeah, it'll be lovely to do this in person next time.
Members will be really, really appreciated.
Oh, we'd love to do this in person next time if possibly can. I think there's
thanks very much.
It's great. All right, thank you. Take care.
Yep.